Hi, this is Tyrone, and welcome to another edition of The Agent. This week's episode is titled A Refugee Model. A few weeks ago, I had been procrastinated, basically thinking whether or not to do another year of studies. But then the day before the first class was about to begin, I got a text from one of my favorite professors. She was reminding me that class would begin the next day and she was expecting to see me there. So I took that as a sign from God that I needed to just do it. Finish what you start. And so I went to class the next day. And I'm so glad I did. But missing in class was a tall, beautiful Russian model from the past semester. She was a young journalist who had fled Russia and had applied for political asylum here in France. But she wasn't the only student missing. In fact, there was only a few of us who had returned this season. Instead, a fresh new set of students arrived in class, all from many different parts of the world. So, during the class, the professor asked each of us to share where we were from, introduce ourselves, and what we did for a living. One worked in the healthcare field, one a mechanic, one in a boulangerie or bakery. The guy who worked in a boulangerie was from Tunisia, and he shared how difficult it was for him as he had to get up early each morning to start baking and finish late in the evenings. Then the guy from Bangladesh shared the amount of hours he had to work each month. A total of 257 hours for 1,300 euros per month. That's roughly 16 hours a day for 425 euros a week. Along with working those hours, he was also committed to making it to class 3 days a week for 2 hours each of those days. He shared he had to pay a heavy price to make it to France, but one he was truly thankful for. The entire class, including the professor, we all gasped in awe at the amount of hours and the pay amount he received. One could only wonder what other price did he pay to make it to France. I dared not ask, but what's amazing was how joyful and happy he was. In that moment, my decision whether or not to continue class, that went through the window. I thought if he could commit to doing all that, then I had nothing to complain about. My pitiful stance only diminished as I thought if he could work so many hours and still make it to class and not even complain. I need to be thankful that I had an opportunity to attend class. That's when I realized that some of the students were in fact refugee migrants who had fled persecution and had crossed the rough Mediterranean seas, all to get to France, like the mechanic guy from Sudan, a war-torn country who rarely said a word the past year. One may ask what would possess someone to make such a treacherous crossing in such rough waters to get to a land they barely knew anything about. The answer was so clear. They saw an opportunity that lay ahead. They saw hope, they saw freedom, and they were possessed by faith and trust that if they could only get there, they could leave behind the persecutions they had faced, even if it meant crossing the rough seas. You see, some have fled violence, religious, political, sexual identity, forced marriages, and even ethnic cleansing. They had traveled by land and sea for days, weeks, and some for months, just to get away from what they were running from. They knew the journey would be difficult, but they would rather drown in those waters than stay where they were. I think to myself, what have they left behind? What have they lost? Their families. How many have they seen drowned, including loved ones? I don't know. I was too ashamed to ask because of my thinking. They could have stayed in some of the countries they had to cross, but they knew their final destination was France. What's amazing is they never gave up. In the Bible, many people settled and never moved forward. They wanted the easy life and became content with what they knew and what was easy for them. Such were the tribes of Reuben and Gad, who along with the other 10 tribes of Israel had left Egypt and crossed the Red Sea. But when it came time to cross over to the river Jordan, to the promised land, those 2 tribes decided that they did not want to continue to move on. but would rather stay where they were. You see, they became too comfortable. In life, we accomplish some things, but never truly complete anything. Gad and Reuben did not make it to their final destination, which was the promised land. Instead, they stayed where they were. You see, when your inheritance is on the other side, but you're too afraid or become too comfortable to stick it out and move on, you'll end up making excuses just to stay where you are because you're too afraid to keep on trying. But what Gad and Reuben did not know was that if they had crossed the River Jordan, they would have received greater blessings. And so it finally dawned on me why God wanted me back in class, even if it was for me to see the faces of brothers and sisters who would do anything just to be safe and to experience a freedom they did not know in their own country, a freedom in a new country. The young Russian model was forced to leave her family, friends, and the career she loved because of political views, but found a surprise new calling as a model in the capital city of fashion, Paris. Just like the Tunisian who left his homeland, the young girl in her class from India, the Sudanese who fled a war-torn land, and the guy from Bangladesh, all made a sacrifice to see what was at the end of their rainbow. And then I remember Joni Mitchell's beautiful song, Both Sides Now. It's a beautiful song. And in the words, some of the words that she sang in it, she sang of clouds, life, and love. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. And in another line she sang, I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. And so I realized life and love are like clouds. They move at their own speed, and all we can do is look to the Lord to guide and lead us wherever His cloud is taking us. Today, I see my classmates as a reminder of God's grace and His mercies on my life. I pray you too are reminded of what you see around you, the blessings that God's cloud is still guiding you, even when you think it isn't. Shabbat Shalom. God bless you. Have a great and wonderful weekend. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.